Welcome to Call Your Hits, a Storm Riders Airsoft podcast. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Today, it's Pat and me in the studio again, and apologies for missing last week. I had COVID. I'm still sort of reeling and recovering. My voice is mostly back to normal, as you. Apologies for that. Mostly back to normal. So last week was a bit of an exception. But yeah, so we're excited to get back at it. Last weekend, at time of recording, was my first Airsoft game of the season. Pat didn't attend for reasons we'll get into the episode. And in one of our previous episodes, we had talked about how like winter was over for us and we were about to start the season anew. And what's really interesting is we had a bunch of different people comment about sort of the fact that, hey, this is the end of winter and it's the start of our season. And anytime we mention that, we always have like those like tough guy David Goggins people who are like, oh, who's going to carry the boats? I play all year long. I play in the rain and the sleet and the snow and the whatever. And it's like, okay, tough guy, like that's great. But the reality is like, as we've just talked with people on the Discord, in fact, we've really come to know and realize that different people play Airsoft at different times of the year for different reasons. So for us, we've always sort of kind of packed it up for the winter because playing in the winter is not super great. You don't get a huge turnout. It's cold, obviously. Your guns are more brittle, etc. But some other people commented on that video saying, oh, winter's over. Well, this means that our airsofting season is also over because our summers are really, really, really hot and we don't play when it's that hot. In fact, we have one of the guys who's in the community, Todd, joining us at Iron Horse. He's actually not playing. He's coming to hang out, which is super cool. And I can't wait to meet him. He's been on the podcast before. But he doesn't want to play because it's going to be like, 35, 40 degrees centigrade plus humidity and et cetera. And that's just not a really good experience.
I mean, like, in fairness to him, I'm a liquid at that time for sure.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, I'm because, again, it's never very hot here in Canada where we live in Newfoundland. And so, being able to build up a sweat response to heat is difficult to do. That's why I'm training in a sauna and all this kind of stuff. So like, I totally feel that. And it's just, it always just strikes me as funny how, you kind of take it for granted what the climate is like where you are. And the reality is airsofters play, all year round in different conditions. And not everyone has the luxury of living somewhere where it's kind of temperate all year round that allows you to play airsoft outdoors all year round for whatever reason. I personally would prefer to play in, minus 10 degrees Celsius weather and bundle up than historically try and play in like 40-degree weather, because that's a different, whole different kettle of fish, as we say on the East Coast, right?
Yeah, I mean, playing in 40 degrees here is thankfully very rare. At least from my point of view, it's thankful. The couple of like 36, 38 degree days we get in the summer are days where it's like, all right, I'm either going to be outside with a barbecue and a cold drink, or I'm going to be in an air conditioned room.
Yeah, exactly.
That's that, right? In terms of the playing in the winter aspect, like one of the practical factors for us relative to some other folks is also that the field we play at predominantly ceases to be maintained during the winter.
Yeah.
And so it's pretty profoundly unsafe to play there in 2 feet or 3 feet of snow, frankly.
And they stop running open games, period, right? They just transition indoors. So even if we wanted to, like, we'd have to do a private game or like all this kind of stuff. And so if you live in a place where you don't have any airsoft in the winter, like, that doesn't mean, you're some sort of like not tough guy or whatever. It just means that, that's not the best season to enjoy playing airsoft. And fundamentally, it's all about enjoyment. Like, if you go out there and it just sucks, right? It's not even type 2 fun, which is fun where it sucks at the time, but like you enjoy it after. But it's like type 3 fun where it just sucks, period. And you go home and your hands are icicles, and you get the screaming barfies. I don't know if any of you guys have ever experienced this, but it's like this is a real thing that occurs where your hands get so cold, and then when you try and warm them up under hot water, it is extremely painful, and that pain is so intense that it causes you to vomit. This is a real effect that can happen.
Do not
as a
want.
result. Yeah, it's insane. So like that's not fun for anybody. So yeah, if you don't enjoy playing in those conditions, then that's fine. And if you don't
Yeah,
play enjoy
legit.
playing when it's hot, like that's fine too. So anyways, all this to say that our Airsoft winter has finally come to an end. The season picked up, and the game. So we've had two games in our community so far this year. I missed the first one because again COVID, and the second one was last weekend, and the turnout for us was huge, which is awesome. We had a lot of returning players, and also like a lot of new faces that maybe they just have new kit and I didn't recognize who they were. But like several people who seemed really dialed actually, and I don't really remember seeing them around a whole lot in the previous year. Maybe they picked up Airsoft over the winter and like played out the indoor mostly, etc. I definitely know that's the case for one person. Um, but yeah, it was awesome.
Awesome.
Like yeah, really really good turnout and good to see.
So,
The weather wasn't super awesome, but hey, what can you do?
but I mean, it wasn't like dreadful either.
No, that's true. It
um,
was dry at the very least.
you
That's
know,
all. That especially since we had snow the night previous, which
right?
was
Like,
so
good, good.
stupid.
I,
Yeah,
I love my mid-May snow.
yeah. No, no,
So,
thank
what game
you.
modes did you guys get on the go? What was the game plan?
Um,
Because I know you have been talking about trying
yeah.
to sort of move or convince people to move away from the exact same formula every week thing.
Yeah. So firstly, it was Noah who was refing. So if you're local, you know who I'm talking about. If you're not local, well, Noah's a really good guy.
Yeah,
He's been with the
for those who
community
aren't
for
local, that translates to if you have an idea, Noah is absolutely here for it. It's wicked.
yeah,
He's a very, very open-minded ref.
yeah, and he's been in the community a while. He's a youngster who sort of grew up with the frontline community, which is awesome. And so
We
we
have
played
trained him.
yeah we played the first few like team deathmatch games like we always do, etc. And then we did a like what we call it a rush game, but it's basically that game mode where you have defense points. Defenders have to defend a particular point, and then if they're hit, they have to fall back to the second defense point that's further back. And so the attackers move forward, and as they take those points, they can respawn closer. And so the way that we played this was on the road. So we had like the hill, the bus, and the village. So basically, we were on a timer, unlimited respawns for the attackers, which we were, and just basically tried to push our way across the field
Right. So,
to
hey,
finally make it into the village.
what can you do in 20 minutes rather than you have 5 lives to do this thing?
Yeah, and the defenders are outnumber the attackers and they're entrenched, but they always have to fall back. So after a while, it's sort of like you're whittling down their numbers a little bit to try and so okay, you get a couple guys down, and then with their numbers down, then you can do like a flank or you can do a coordination. And that was a good game. We had a lot of fun. I was not a I'm not going to say a soup sandwich, but I felt out of place with my Iron Horse kit because I was just dressed in khaki pants and a gray shirt, which by the way, I mean, it's the kit that I have is built for Georgia. So, it's not super hot. I was a little chilly, but that's fine.
I mean, it's
But
also
I
probably not going to blend super well into the camo, or rather, work well as camo. Not going to blend you super well into the woods here.
yeah, and I felt very self-conscious about not wearing camo because like no, there are a couple of places where I really like to tuck in and like use some of the like the pine trees and stuff that are always green to sort of camouflage myself. And I'm like, anyone who's looking will see me because I'm just this gray blob that's not supposed to be there. And also, I was wearing the
I was going to say,
uh,
unlike the gray blobs, which we use as cover.
well, yeah, but like if you know how like you're looking through a tree and then you see sort of like just the background. It's like dark or whatever. But then if there's just gray behind there, you're like, oh, that's something. It's very easy to spot. At
Oh, yeah,
least
totally is.
for
It,
me,
it's
right?
a yes, there's the target practice.
Yeah. And then also I was wearing my Pyramex Highlanders, which I ordered from Amazon because they inexplicably told me they would be next day shipping, like which for us in Newfoundland is unheard of, but they did show up next day, so that was cool.
What
But they're
sorcery is
reflective,
this?
right? They're reflective lens, so they look really cool. Chaz had them on the Discord. He posted this amazing picture of himself at Battle for Los Angeles, and I was like, "Those are cool. I want to try them out." I actually brought 4 pairs of iPro with me to test because avid listeners will know that I've been using the ESS Advancer V12s for years and years and years. I'm on my like third or fourth set of frames since 2009. I don't know how many pairs of lenses I've gone through, but it's a lot. But now the frames that I mean, they just keep breaking because fundamentally that they're not really it's not that they're meant to be disposable, but like you use them a lot and then they crack and then they're not comfortable and then like typically they crack right here on the bridge of my nose, which is not comfy. So I've
And
been looking for
my
stuff to
experience has
replace
been,
them.
oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
My experience with them is also that when they crack there, they don't seal properly anymore, or maybe that's just my skull.
Well,
Um,
it's not even that they seal. It's that the rubber like forks and then it's just poking in your face, which is not comfortable over long periods of time. And so I've been looking for replacements. So I have the Pyramex iForce, which are dual pane um, glass safety glasses in like a high def yellow, right? I
yep.
have the Pyramex Highlanders, which are single pane but they're reflective and they look really cool. And on both of those, I actually took the gasket out and then I dremeled it out to make the holes bigger and then put it back.
Okay.
So that helps with airflow. And then I have got a set of 3M just regular $5 Canadian safety glasses that they'll stop a grinding disc, so they will stop a BB. But I just wanted to try them and see what they're like. And they have a gasket as well. And then a pair of Uvex iPro, and Uvex is a they're like a working brand. Like so people who work in like the trades and stuff, like Stefan, for example, as a welder, those are his regular like work site goggles, glasses, whatever.
Yeah.
So I
Have to
have
wear this. Have to
them.
keep my eyeballs in my skull.
And again, yeah, exactly. And they're full seal. They've got a gasket. So I brought 4 pairs to try, and I actually only ended up wearing the Highlanders and not testing out the other ones, which is kind of a bummer. But I did that because the Highlanders were just really great. Like they were very comfortable. I could take them on and off because it didn't have a strap, which was actually awesome. I know that you've got the M Force, the Oakley M frames now with the gasket, the Helo kit.
Yep.
And so like you can experience that as well. Like that's awesome. Being able to go into the safe zone and take off your iPro without having to take your helmet off for me is going to be super great.
Yeah, I can definitely see the appeal there. The
Yeah.
Oakleys came with a little loop strap that I've got on them, just so like, but they'll be able to just be like tuck down, tuck up, super
Yeah, and
easily.
I mean, the Highlanders that I have the strap. Some fields require you to have a strap on your goggles. I don't know if that's the case when we go to the United States. I'm gonna have to look at the sheet again. But regardless, if it does, then I can have it on there. Otherwise, I can take it off, and that'll be
Yeah,
fine.
no, legit.
But yeah, so definitely felt a bit like overexposed as a consequence of that. But it was a really good game. We had huge numbers, right? So for us, huge, right? So there were 15 defenders, 13 attackers.
Which is
Um,
a fantastic
yeah,
day for us, especially at the very beginning of the season. Like
yeah.
10 out of 10.
And big mix. So we had lots of beginners, but also some more advanced people. And we were able, on our side, it was really like, it was Storm Riders plus a bunch of beginners and a couple of other, and then a couple of other community members like Sasha and Jack,
Great.
who've been around for a while. So we were able to coordinate some stuff, really like utilize people's skills, coordinate. And like there's definitely a point where we had a really good plan getting up to the first objective, and then after that, it was kind of just a fustercluck, if you get my meaning. And so halfway through, I was just like, okay, we're pushing on the right, Jason's on the left. What is going on? I'm like, okay, you know what? Peel back from all that like fighting. I go into the middle and I just like I talk to Jason over the radio. I'm like, "You guys are on the left. Are you ready to push into the village if we put a base of fire down?" And he's like, "Yep." And I was like, "Okay." So I just shot at the guys who were like in front of me in my area, and I'm like, "Okay, guys, on my signal, just go ahead and hose like as much fire as you can into the village, into the windows, into the buildings. Doesn't really matter. We got friendlies pushing on the left." And they're like, "Okay," which is exactly what you want. And so
Find me an
Jason was
airsofter
ready.
who cannot follow the instruction. Shoot
Yeah,
that way lots.
yeah, totally. So then Jason got ready, and we started putting fire down. He moved in with his guys. A couple guys got hit, but one guy managed to get on the objective, which we then used to sort of springboard a couple more guys. And then Kirby and a couple of other guys on the right hand side started pushing. I was able to provide support on the right side, covering behind the buildings. We managed to get in. It was once we got there, like it was basically just done like dinner. Like we did very well because we were coordinating and communicating and moving and stuff like that. So that was really effective. That was really fun. And
Sounds
then,
solid, you know.
yeah. And then the second game that we played was this bomb objective game where basically we had to bring our bomb prop to one of two potential sites on the Black Hawk field. So we could bring it to the fuselage or we could bring it to the tank on the Black Hawk field. Now, they're not like super far apart, so it's not like selecting that was like a huge
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah. Once you
But
pick, the other's not prohibitive as such.
yeah, and their objective was to defend, of course. And they couldn't really get too far away from their start. They could move a little bit like into the woods, but that was basically it. So for that game, again, the split was pretty even. It was mostly they split up the Storm Riders on for that game, uh, and so what we decided to do was basically push everyone to attack the fuselage to make it seem that that's what we wanted to do, and then actually have a smaller group try and sneak around to try and get to the tank once all their
Ooh,
forces moved over.
tactics. I love
Um,
it.
and that kind of worked, but it kind of didn't because ultimately, I guess they either saw through it or I guess it just degenerated. But so we were attacking the fuselage and we were doing great work, but they were also defending the tank really well. It turns out it's that field is really hard to defend. The cover kind of sucks. It's really meant to be cover for when you're playing on that field specifically, kind of like a speedball field or something of that nature, or like a speed QB kind of situation, right?
And I mean, we
So
talked
yeah.
we've talked before about the fact that like in the rush game, like the push game that you mentioned at the beginning of this, often that starts on Blackhawk, and often
Mhm.
the longest and most challenging part of the game for the team that's doing the attacking is getting off that field because the
Correct.
cover
Yeah.
there is such garbage.
And the
um,
cover in the woods is so good,
yeah,
right? Now, the disadvantage that we had is none of the foliage is grown in, so like that also didn't help us. But it really didn't matter because on the flip side, it did allow us really good fire lanes. So myself and a couple of people, Jack and one of the other guys who I didn't know, we managed to push really, really well on the fuselage on the left hand side. And like, there's so many holes, so many openings. Like, it was hard for them to hold on to that. So we did manage to win that game as well. So that was pretty cool.
yeah, it's not the most
It was
defensible chunk of terrain.
no, and you know what? Like that's it's a good lesson for us, just in general. But it was fun. Like I think everyone had a good time.
I mean,
No one
like,
was frustrated by that. Like
yeah,
not even the defenders, right?
one of the things that's worth noting is like a hard game doesn't mean a bad one, right?
Mhm.
So um, in practice, like it's also a fairly compressed field, which probably made the diversion, I don't want to say redundant, but like less effective than it could have been.
Yeah, for
In
sure, for sure.
in that there's only so far you can pull people
Yeah,
away, but like at the end of the day, that doesn't make it uninteresting to have tried the diversion, nor does it make it impossible or uninteresting to defend. It's just a matter of there are so few specific pieces of cover you can utilize effectively when defending or pushing out of that field that you're going to be on those, period.
yeah, exactly right. And credit to them. Like they did have did do a lot of blasting. I know Sasha was on that team, and he was just unloading with his RPK or whatever his squad automatic weapon that he's replica that he's using is. He was just putting so much fire down. So good on him. And then some of the like the renters and stuff were flipping to auto and just hosing into the woods. Great, so awesome. Um, but yeah, definitely a tough go for them to just hold on to that. But I mean, overall, that was a pretty fun game. Um, then we played. What did we play? We did some more team deathmatch. I feel like, and then we did a D-Day game. And that was really interesting. Um, just because again, like my replica wasn't really working exactly how I wanted it to. Like I was having difficulty reaching out and touching people. And I was having BB difficulty getting BBs really on target at like longer distances. I've been noticing that when my shot goes out and it reaches like not certainly not the end of the flight path, but pretty far into the flight path. I mean, we can call it like 120 feet or something like that, like 30 meters, 40 meters, something like that. It just starts curving to the left always, right? And so it could be the barrel alignment in there. There could be an issue with the nozzle, which we're going to deal with. But also, I think fundamentally, last season, one of the
this
things that we
this is
tried.
a problem for future Pat and future Phil.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things though that we tried last year was the 6.01 millimeter barrel, the Lambda, with the MR hop, right?
Yep.
Which is the hop, the like R hop replica kind of situation. And it's much easier. And so the conversation I was having with Lane, who's Scum Customs on the Discord, was like, is
Yeah, yeah.
fundamentally like they're basically, they're not as good as a real R hop, but like the difference is immaterial. Like like for the difference in time. And my sense is that maybe the difference is immaterial, but I definitely probably notice it because I've been using an R hop for so long. And so now I'm at a point where it's like I'm not able to really get that performance metric that I'm looking for that I know I can get.
And like we have
So
the
yeah,
it's one of those things where, it could be the R hop patch. It could be the barrel spacer that you installed. It could just be, winter in Newfoundland.
yeah, yeah,
So like we have options to fiddle with, to adjust and try to resolve it.
for
Um,
sure. So and like I'm not upset about it. Put it that way. Like I was still able to do work. I was still able to hit targets when they got closer to me, especially. But I really noticed it on the D-Day field because as a defender, which we were in that game, it's just an open field, right? So for my money, what I want my replica to be able to do is if I'm defending and I'm at the D-Day bunkers and someone's standing at the other end of the field, I want to be able to hit them,
yep.
right? I don't think that's too much of an ask
No, I mean
for
that's
a replica that's shooting 1.5 to like 1.55 joules with
you know
32 BBs. It should be feasible,
unless it's a
right?
really windy day, that's that is very doable.
Yeah, very achievable. So it's not doing that. So then the question is, okay, well, I need to sight in my replica for sure. That's definitely it. But I just need to make sure that I'm getting the sort of hop that I'm wanting, the flight profile that I want, and then overall the accuracy because the consistency is there. When I look at the energy, like when I was chronoing, it was like 1.5, 1.5, 1.51, 1.5, 149, 1.5. So like it's all in that same vicinity,
Yep. And like that's
which
nice because it takes air seal issue out as a possible concern. So it's
yeah, and you would expect that if your pressure is not changing from your HPA, it's going to be exactly the same basically every single time. Um,
well, and you were saying that
so
it was being pretty consistent in hooking off on you. So
yes, yeah, and it's always going the same way exactly. So there's some troubleshooting to be done. Not super upset. Did I hit people? Yeah, of course I did. It's D-Day. It's target rich environment. They're coming to you, so it's not like like you're not going to hit anybody.
many
And once
targets,
I
little
knew that
cover.
Well, yeah, and that once I knew that it was also curving to the left, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to use that and shoot around some cover if I can, and
Yeah.
see about doing that. Um, that was a really fun game. Had a really good time. Again, it was kind of chill. So I mean, you're a defender, so you're just sitting there and you're talking to people. They're hosing you with BBs, but you're relatively safe in cover. And so if you're smart about how you use cover, like we are, so you're peeled back from your cover, you can very easily come out and use the angles to your advantage and see people and not overexpose yourself and all this kind of stuff. The only time that I got hit that entire game was when ET ran up to the bunkers and threw a grenade inside the bunker that I was in, and thereby won the game because they just had to tap the bunker to win.
Yeah.
Right?
And you're like,
Yeah. And so I was like, oh, cool. He had one of those ASG storm grenades, which, by the way, fits in my grenade clips. So that's probably going to happen at some
I was
point.
about to say,
Um,
to it plans.
yeah,
Sick.
but yeah, really, really fun game. Some of the guys, as just a random aside, one of the guys who was playing uh, was a guy named Jordan O'Reilly, and I'm not sure if you would remember this guy, but he played with us at Redcliffe back in like 1776 when we used to play at Redcliffe all the time. He started playing at the same time that Matt Ripien on our team started
Oh
playing.
wow. All right.
So like
Coolness.
that's a long time ago. And he was like, he came up to me during the game and he was like, "Hey, so you don't remember me?" And I was like, "I'm sorry, I don't. Plus you're, covered head to toe in stuff and I can barely see your face." And he's like, "No, I'm Jordan O'Reilly." I'm like, "Oh my God, I remember you now that you told me
Yeah, yeah.
your name." And he's like, "Yeah, I'm just getting back into it. I just broke out my G&G, I think it's a CM16 Raider that he had from the closet, and it's not working really great." I'm like, "Well, it's been sitting in your closet for what probably seems like 12 years, so that would probably do it." But he was like, "Man, it's bumping here. Like it's a really big group. So hopefully we see more of him this year, which
That's
would be
wicked.
great."
Yeah, man. I
But
mean,
yeah, so he was defending with us, and his gun just like died mid game, and he's like, I was looking to see if anybody had a pistol. I'm like, yeah, no, it's too cold for any of us to really rock. It's like it was 4 degrees Celsius. Like it's not really gonna do.
yeah,
But yeah,
the
so it
propane
was
will not do her.
yeah, yeah. So it was fun to do a D-Day game. And like I've spent a lot of time attacking on D-Day, so being a defender is kind of okay. Um, but attacking is more dynamic. It's more fun.
Yeah, I
So
mean, defending on that field is about laying as much fire down as you possibly can,
yeah,
for as long as you can before you get shot in the dome. Admitting that, like, the way the cover is laid out, I often get shot in, like people skip BBs off my forehead. It's great.
yeah. Well, I mean, that's kind of
That's
the
what I
way
signed
it's
up
gonna
for.
be. Yeah, and especially like in the spring, and like the before like the foliage comes in, like all the left and right side, like it's not very usable for cover or concealment. So you're just kind of like relegated to actually using the battlements that they've put up there,
Yeah,
which is not ideal. But hey,
we have some cover
still,
here, and otherwise we are hanging out.
yeah, it is super fun though, and I'm glad that they won. I think it's the kind of game where you really want the attackers to win that game, and it requires a little bit of coordination. And if you can get it, then it becomes. We had a couple of guys get pretty close, and they just got schwacked. Um, if our heads were down, then it would have been a lot harder. Although I did have this absolutely magical moment that happened where I was the only one protecting the right hand side, and this guy is running full tilt towards us. And I engage him, and I've been shooting for a while, right? So I engage him, and I ran dry, right? So I shot, and then I'm like, oh my God, I'm empty. So I do what is the fastest reload of my life. And the dude is probably, I'm gonna say, 5 meters from winning, basically, from running up to this building. And my mag is going in, but I'm not gonna make it, right? And then as I'm like, oh my God, I'm not gonna make it, from behind me, I hear Matt's replica go clack, 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 and hit the guy, and his hand goes up. And I'm like, oh my God, that was just so close. Like I didn't even know what to do. I was like, oh my God, I'm not gonna make it. Like that's it. And then Matt literally just saved, well, didn't save my life, but like he literally
It's
came
just
out of nowhere. His replica goes off, takes the guy, and I'm like, okay,
nope, nope, nope,
okay,
nope.
this is
Yep.
good. Yeah. Yeah, it was like that was the win for me. Like I'm like, that's just yeah, it was chef's kiss.
I mean, that's why we play with teammates, right? Like,
Yeah.
because some days you're like, well, I'm hosed. Oh, I'm not hosed. Hooray!
Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, if we had lost, then that would have been 100% on me. Like I should have done an admin load when I was behind cover, and I had a second, and I just didn't think of doing it, and boom, there we go.
Love it.
Um, yeah. So overall, I mean, it was a great day. A couple of times I got shot, and I had no idea where. I was in behind one of the buildings. I was following Steph because we were doing attack. It's like I got behind this piece of cover, and I got shot in the shoulder, and I'm like, or like I felt a BB hit in my shoulder, and it hurt enough that like even like 5 minutes later, I was like, it still kind of stings. And like I have no idea where that came from. I have no idea where it could have come from. I don't know if it was a ricochet. I don't know if my replica went off and it just shot me in the
Guys,
shoulder, like
guys, I
bounced
have
off
been
something.
shot from space.
But I remember being behind cover, and like Stefan went into the building, and I felt that hit, and I was like looking behind me, and it's all teammates, and I'm like, that's where did I get shot from? I'm like, okay, well, I'm hit, and I
Doer?
walked off, and I was
Doer?
like and I was in the safe zone, just like completely bewildered. I was like, Jason came by, I was like, did you shoot me? He's like, no. And like Kirby comes by, I was like, did you shoot me? He's like, no. I was like, guys, what the hell? Like, who shot me? Nobody fessed up to it, and I was like,
Feels being shot by
I
the
don't
ghosts
know.
of Airsoft first
At some
past.
point, well, yeah, at some point, Matt was like, "Listen, it was just like a ricochet. Just like you called it, whatever, it's fine." Because for us, ricochets typically don't count. But that happened twice. There was another time I was behind a church on the village field talking to some guy, and I got shot like in the leg, like on the inside, on the like ventral side next to my knee, on my thigh, and I was like, "What? What? That's not even exposed. Like, what's going on here?" Anyways, so you know,
How does
just the
this keep
spirit of
happening?
it's the spirit of Matt Pugh just like kneecapping me, like shooting me behind the knees or something. But no, seriously, like I was just like, okay, well, I'm hit. I don't know from where, I don't know from whom, but I mean, like, and like the thing is, like, if there's somebody there who like had me dead to rights and shot me like with a magnified optic and I didn't see it, and they saw me get the hit, and I was just like looking around, like I'm not gonna call it, like that's just stupid.
Oh yeah, no,
Um,
like it's the right thing to do. And I mean, like usually afterwards the player who shot you with a magnified
yeah,
optic will be like, haha, right?
yeah, exactly. But no, in this case, like no dice, was very very confused.
Weird.
Um, yeah, and so that's pretty much what that day was like. We did end up playing the what do you call it, the oh my god, words not coming to me. Assimilation.
Oh yeah.
We finished off with an assimilation, and that was fun. But like I find like those games towards the end just like because what happens with assimilation for those of you listening is like it starts with a very low number of players. So in this it was 3 on 25. But every time one of the 25 get hit, they join the smaller group. So at some point you just end up with 25 attackers and 3 defenders basically. And by that point, it just gets kind of silly because then you're just the attackers never fully die, like they just keep respawning. So you're just basically running in like guns ablazing into the village, like shoulder firing your replica, or not hip firing your replica, I should say, because it doesn't matter. Like there's 12 other guys with you. You're hunting one poor soul that's stuck in a building or something. Like so,
A lot of our end of the
yeah.
day game modes are let's just like empty our medics the fun way.
Which is totally cool. I think it's it's a good game mode. It's just I remember like I was at the end of that game. Matt was there with me, and he was like shooting people from like I don't know, like 150 feet away or something like that. Like he was doing great work, and then like people are running into the village, and I looked at him, I'm like, "Are we going in there?" He's like, "Well, I've got a I've got a MED," so I was like, "Oh, that's fair." It's
I
like,
live
but
out here right now.
there's also like 15 guys in there who are looking for those people. So maybe we just don't and just sort of just chill out and wait, which was totally fine. So it was just a really good day, and I hope that at our op coming up in a couple of weeks, op touchdown, that players are many of those players are going to come out again and fill out the numbers. It'd be cool to have. I mean, if we had 28 players on a random day, like at an op, like we might hit 50. Like that
That
would
would
be
be
very cool.
I would be so stoked. Like
Yeah,
that would be really good.
because really for op touchdown, like everyone will play except for you and me, right? Like all the Storm Riders will be gold teams, so they'll be the quote unquote football. I said to Kirby, I'm like, you like American football so much, I made you into a football.
Bonus
You're
points will be
welcome.
awarded if you pick up my teammates and carry them to the goal line.
Chaz was suggesting that they should dress in stripes, like in ref stripes, and I thought that would be really
Man,
funny.
the
Um,
I bet we could like get ref stripes pretty cheap at a secondhand store.
Possibly, but yeah. So we've got that upcoming. So I mean, I'm really hoping that I'm really hoping that a lot of people turn out. There's a lot of people who apparently played at the indoor, like basically all winter, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's right.
Also kind of scary because that means that they got lots of practice while we were basically just doing ready ups in the
Well, we'll
garage or
get the
whatever.
rust knocked off us the hard way.
Yeah. But yeah, but I think it also means that there are people who are going to show up and like who we may not have seen before, who are ripping, roaring, ready to play. So that's
Right.
going to be kind of cool. Um, yeah, and so aside from that, it's just I'm going to be playing now a couple more times. Obviously, I'm going to try and play every weekend now before the op, and then every weekend as much as I can until Iron Horse. So I mean, like I'll be playing this weekend coming, and then the weekend after. Obviously, I won't be able to because I've got the Paradise Backyard Ultra, and then the weekend after that, it's
The op.
the op,
Yep.
and then we've got basically in looking at the calendar in June, we've got June 8th, June 15th, and June 22nd, which are 3 Saturdays, and those 3 Saturdays would be the last three open days before we go to John and I go to Iron Horse. So definitely want to make sure that I'm playing as much as I can just to get most of the rust knocked off before we hit the field in Georgia. So yeah, it
For
was
sure.
really fun.
No, that's awesome. I didn't make it out. Partly health stuff. You know, my colitis was cranky.
Mm.
Um,
I'm telling you,
And
man, you just got to do chicken and rice basically. Just eat chicken and rice, and you will never have a problem again.
my favorite thing about this is that that diet is actually terrible for my guts.
No, I just assumed that because that's what you give like sick dogs is chicken and rice. So
You heard it here, folks. At least he's not talking about putting me down.
not yet. That'll happen. We'll have the quality of life conversation later.
Um, so yeah, in- independent of talking about the weirdness that is my internal organs, also my Redline Mini SFR has just proven beyond my ability to properly get working. I think there's genuinely something wrong with it at this point, like not just
Mhm.
my failing to lubricate it properly, or it's just so fiddly that I don't want to keep it. If it.
Are you gonna RMA it or?
Yeah, so when I was emailing them a couple of months ago, they were like, "Yeah, just mail it to us, and we'll like have a look at it for you, and then mail it back." So I am gonna do that over the summer at some point when I have like the time to deal with it. It's the end of the school year, right? Like the 6 weeks that Phil just outlined are the last 6 weeks of the school year here, and so my life is going to be a little busy for the next bit. So it may transpire that like it gets mailed out at the beginning of June. It may transpire that it gets mailed out at the end of June.
Yeah.
It's a matter of just like getting that sorted. And like if it comes back and it was just like I didn't know how to lube it properly and they can give me better instructions, great. If it comes back and it's like, yeah, there was something wrong with it, they fixed it, even better. Just
Mhm.
because I'll be less embarrassed by that option. But we'll let you know. So I couldn't. Well, I could have gone out and used just the Garand, but I was feeling crummy and I was cheesed off about that, so I elected to just sort of not bother.
Mhm.
Um, you know, I've been and will continue to be teased about that by the teammates. So, as
Well, I
is
mean,
as is fair and
the
just.
only the only thing the only thing you cheated was yourself, really, because aside from not feeling great, which is legit 100%, and I'm not suggesting that anyone listening should, fight through an illness or anything like that to play airsoft. Like, if you're not feeling good, take the time, feel better. That's what you should do. Um, unless you're a big baby, in which case, just whatever. But no, seriously, I think if you're feeling bad, you should stay home. But um, it would have been nice, of course, for you to be there because it was a good crew. But I also understand too, like if you've got gear that you want to use and it's not usable, then using your backup gear sometimes it's like it's not really the vibe, right?
Yeah,
So
and
I
like
totally get that. So you got a new regulator
today.
in the interim.
Yeah, I ordered a new reg last week. And ordered it too late for it to possibly be here on time for the weekend.
Hmm.
But was sort of like, nope, I'm gonna make sure it actually arrived today, which was like 2 days early. So
No
um,
complaints.
yeah, no, fantastic, right? So my goal was to make sure that it was here so that I could play on this coming Saturday. I've switched over to a Polar Star modular regulator, so they're slightly larger one than the one you have.
Okay.
Um, that's meant to have like options integrated with other stuff in the future. They haven't really um, provided a whole lot of those, like they haven't released them, but it has one feature that I think is really, really cool relative to yours or the Redline Mini. So the Redline that I have is a balanced regulator, so you won't see the like pressure in your bottle dipping cause you any problems in terms of jewel creep or anything.
Okay.
Um, and I think that's probably redundant for how we play and the amount of air tank I now have. Like just
Hmm.
having a carbon fiber tank means that's probably redundant. But it's a really cool feature, and like I would definitely like to get ideally both of them up and running and working properly so that I can fiddle around with stuff. Um, the Polar Star MR has a off valve. So like you
Okay.
can turn the air from the tank off before you disconnect it from your tank. And having fiddled with taking them off of tanks with air in them a whole bunch in the last few months, that's kind of great. I
Yeah.
really I know the answer to why the one you have and why the SFR don't have it is just trying to make them shorter and smaller so that people can fit them into an even more compact space for play. And I
Hmm.
know that's hugely valuable to a couple people. It isn't an issue for me. So it's one of these sort of like, I think knowing what I know at this point and owning the tanks I own at this point, I probably would just have gotten one of these. But also, it's a, uh, you know, welcome to Stormriders Airsoft, where we experiment on stuff so that you don't have to.
Yeah.
And like in terms of utility, like again, I really do think something's off with it. But the mini SFR is a really like fantastic reg when it worked. So like, and I'm not blaming either the regulator or the company. It's definitely either I did something to it that I shouldn't have by accident, or something failed in it, just sort of in use, and I couldn't get it to work. But
Hmm.
I have a new regulator. Uh, it is. I was doing some testing with it before we started recording. It works great. So I am good to go for Saturday, and I am super stoked to actually go and get some play in.
Does it allow you to uh like does it have like two outputs so you can have like you can double tap? Is it one of those where you can double
So
tap?
it isn't currently. That is one of the modular features that's supposed to eventually
Okay.
arrive. But like again, it's been a few years since it was announced that it would have those features, and not all of them have, or that most of them haven't materialized.
Gotcha.
Um, but in terms of like our previous chats about the idea of tucking two bottles into my bag, which will absolutely fit, and HPAing a sidearm or whatever. Um, I feel currently like if I can get the SFR working and figure it out, um, I'll send it back to them, and whatever is on the go with it will get resolved.
Hmm.
And if it's just like I need to learn how to lube it properly, I might ask them for a video or something. God only knows. If it is like a genuine issue, it'll get resolved either way. It'd be cool to have a regulator that I keep at sort of the FPS setting or the pressure setting for my M27, and another one for the 249 is sort of what I'm thinking.
Yeah,
You
that'd be
know,
good.
it would be kind of cool to try HPAing a pistol, or getting something like that. But like my airsoft budget for the next month or two, anyway, maybe longer, is spoken for. Buying a new regulator was not in the plan,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and so, and I still think that my like major thing to buy for airsoft this season is some more camo options. Um,
I'm actually surprised that you haven't pulled the trigger on some sort of camo already, given the fact that I know the regulator was sort of like a unforeseen expense, but camo is not tremendously expensive compared to some, unless you're looking at specifically expensive camo, which is I guess is possible.
so I'm specifically looking at um, a piece of German camo that is surplus issued stuff, so it is not super
Eh,
cheap.
Oh, okay.
Um, and I've
Is it
been,
flick turn?
yes, yeah. I think it's really cool. I think it'll work pretty well. I don't know if like there's probably an argument for, and as I'm saying this, I might do it between now and Saturday, for just like trundling out to the army surplus and seeing what they've got in size ogre. At the
Hmm.
moment, where like I'm looking at it, the alders growing outside my basement window. Um, where we are in the season, I feel like multicam works okay, and I have a multicam anorak. Like, so like that and OD trousers might be okay. Um,
Hmm.
you know, the fleck turn, uh, a big part of it is that my fun things budget at the moment is sort of aimed at a new compressor for airbrushing.
Hmm. Right.
Um, but like, yeah, there's a solid argument for maybe having a look at some other camouflages that are cheaper and don't involve shipping something from Europe. Uh,
Yeah.
and
Well, I mean,
then getting the Flecktarn, a little later in the season, um, after my finances recover from having to accidentally buy a regulator.
yeah. Well, I mean, that's fair. Although I mean, buy once, cry once. I think the flick turn is a good, useful one for just in general. So I think um, having something, saving up for it, I think is totally reasonable. I was just found it curious that you hadn't pulled the trigger on it. Like I figured you want to be like ready. I know that you're also thinking about like your head adornments, so to speak,
Yeah,
and what you want to do about that. And I feel like that's something that also should be able to be done pretty quick.
for sure. So like the situation I'm in, I was asking the Discord for suggestions earlier, and I guess when this airs, they'll have more clarification to
Hmm.
provide suggestions. I didn't have a chance to give them much today, just because work was super busy. Um, but so I typically have been just playing with a ball cap and a overhead pair of headphones. Um, and I still really like their I think Earmore
No,
or
Howard
Howard.
Lights is what you're
Thank you.
using. Yeah.
So like they're great. I am kind of at the point where I'm like, it would be cool if I had something I could put over a hat on my head to provide me with some like silhouette breaking. I do have a bunch of boonies, but they don't work really well. Like I can't put them on over the Howards, and putting a Howard
Hmm.
on over them kind of ruins the point of the boonie.
Hmm.
So um, I someone suggested and I'm going to pronounce this wrong, Mitznefet, um, which look super weird. But because they look super weird, I'm fairly convinced they'll be really effective. Those are also, at least sort of real or quasi-real ones, are not super cheap, and they're meant to go over
Hmm.
helmets, which I don't. Well, I guess maybe they could go over the sort of skate helmet that I have. So that's a thing to try. I might also just sort of like go buy some camo mesh and make it into a head cover and rock that.
Another, one thing we didn't talk about, but this is something Frosty has talked about, because in Australia they have like giant bugs of all varieties that try to
Yeah,
kill you.
giant
Um,
mosquitoes.
so they wear bug nets, right? But bug nets are actually another way that you can use to break up your silhouette by just having this box basically on your head, not like a beekeeper's hat, obviously, but like you could get a bug net that you can put over your Howard lights and over all that stuff, which would also do double duty in terms of keeping the bugs out of your face and also maybe stopping BBs. I don't know,
I mean, I
but
feel like BBs will go
fundamentally,
straight through that, but like I'm totally willing to try.
yeah.
And
I don't know if they would go through it. I think they just like push it.
yeah,
But regardless,
either
like
or.
it is silhouette breaking, so that could be a
Yeah,
thing to do.
and I mean,
And then there's the sniper hoods that we talked about, like the ghost hoods or whatever, right? That just sort of you could attach to your ball cap, right? That just add like strands on the back and like kind of like scrim, right? To
yeah.
to break up the silhouette.
So I've definitely got a bunch of options there to look into.
Hmm.
Um, I've only been seriously looking at it today, to be honest with you. So like my decision point, other than like maybe I will go buy something cheap to try this weekend as a starter, is I haven't got a whole lot of thought into it yet. Um,
Hmm.
but it's definitely on my immediate like to do list. And to be honest with you, I did really want to pick up the new camo before the season started, but like um just uh I have been trying to practice more adult financial decision making, i.e. not being a complete goofus and buying random airsoft stuff all the time.
Yeah, it's
um
overrated.
yeah, I don't disagree. It's not as much fun for sure, but yeah, so
Yeah. I will say, like, looking at the crowd that was there this weekend, there was actually there's a few people wearing camo, like a couple people who had camo left over from like previous ops and stuff, like when we said, hey, you have to wear green, for example, for green team last time, all this kind of stuff. And there's Sasha in particular was all scrimmed up, like he had scrim on his like a ghost hood or whatever, like a sniper hood, etc. But I mean, it was the same sort of mix, right? So you had me, who's complete soup sandwich, just wearing gray, and then you had a lot of like people wearing black, a lot of people just wearing tan, like the typical stuff that you see at frontline. So I really feel, especially right now, the camo that you're going to show up with on Saturday isn't necessarily going to help you a whole lot. Not sure,
yeah, well, I
right?
mean,
Because there's no concealment whatsoever. It's just brown,
yeah, like we need
right?
we
Like,
need things to grow in before any of it's going to be
yeah.
super effective for sure. So like I said, I'm not like beating myself up about not having ordered it.
Hmm.
Um, And um, I may also have figured out a solution or an alternate solution for the airbrush. So like that's a if I do, then I will have slightly more hobby budget available for this. But like, yeah, it's a um, it is unfortunately a yeah that's gonna have to wait a few weeks anyway. But like I said, I might pop out to um, one of the places in town that sells camo and just sort of see if they have anything. I know the like army surplus here was bought by a hiking place, so their army surplus pieces are much more limited than they once were.
Hmm.
But if I can get something here that's affordable and reasonable, then that's cool. And otherwise, I'll just use the multicam top layer and the OD pants, and that will probably do her, as it were.
And you could also check Amazon and see if they have any like inexplicably next day shipping items
Yeah,
that you can get, and that might help you out. But yeah, I think overall, like really, coming back to it, I'm just really, really stoked. I think for this season, I did run my Iron Horse kit. I thought, like it's not really a lot of getting used to because it's just my regular kit anyway, just dressed down, I guess, um, with a couple of exceptions. Um, I ran my GoPro all day. I took footage all day
awesome.
of the games that we played and stuff. So that was fun. I'm really just hoping that this season sort of just picks up from here. I'm very excited, for the op that we have going. I think it's going to be. We've never done a game like that before. Like this game, the primary. So I don't know if we've talked about sort of the specifics of the game mode on the podcast before, but what we've created is this um, inspired, I guess, by American football in that both teams are trying to get their gold team operators, which is going to be the Storm Riders, to the end zone. And when they do it, they score. I guess in football they would call it a touchdown. For us, it's just really that's why we called it up touchdown. But fundamentally, they score 1 point on their tracker for building their juggernaut project. And so the first team to get to a certain number, which we're not talking about, uh, is going to be a surprise. But then they get their juggernaut, and it's like the juggernaut versus the anti-juggernaut weapon, and all this kind of stuff. Um, and that's just coming out of reaction from the community, from the community that they really like the tactical football game that we did. And so the idea of like trying to push stuff to the other side of the field was appealing. And then using their feedback, a lot of people, every time we do an op, they're like, "Oh, we should have like a juggernaut on our team or whatever." And I'm like, "Okay, well, there's a way for us to incorporate that in the gameplay as well."
Yeah, I mean, it turns out that it's actually
So
not that
yeah,
hard to build on cool ideas when people constantly are like, "Hey, why don't we try this?" So we're trying a bunch of stuff, and I think it's going to
yeah.
be successful. I also think it's going to be really fun.
There's a lot to be said for just listening to your community. Like you're never going to be able to please everyone. There's always going to be people who want to complain about for stuff for whatever reason, and that's fine. But like if you have like our last game, we had over 40 attendees. If two people complain, well, that's not even 10%. It's like 5% of the player base, right? Are you really going to make modifications to how you deliver things, how change stuff or overhaul it completely because 5% of the people didn't like something? It's like, no, if everybody else liked it,
Yeah,
then that's fine. So there's a piece there around, you want to make sure you have some self-confidence in what you deliver, but also listening if they have suggestions that are like, we liked everything. However, it would have been even better if you did this, or hey, you should try this other thing, which is how a lot of this feedback, especially on the Juggernaut, was delivered to us. That's great. Let's
yeah,
go ahead and let's put that into practice. So
and like,
it's a lot of that, and yeah, hopefully they react to it, right?
yeah, and I mean, 5% of the player base saying something, just to be clear, like we're also not going to ignore it if it's a good
Yes,
idea.
for sure. Yeah.
Um, it's just if 5% of the field are critical of a specific thing and everyone else is saying, "Oh, that was awesome," then
Yeah, like that one person last year who was like, "Don't let the Storm Riders organize games," and it's like, okay, well, somebody else can. I'd be happy to step down and let other people organize the games, but nobody's
you,
doing that.
you
So
feel free, Holmes, to
yeah,
tell us who you are and spend your own money and your own time instead of our money and ours.
yeah, exactly.
Like,
We and, the other thing too is like we're also changing, and always adapting the core mechanics, I would say, based on what people said. So last time, people really liked the idea of like having your bandage that your buddy can put on you so that you're back in the game, and then also having a medic that could medic people back in the game in addition to with limited quantities. People like that too, but they didn't like the ghost mechanic where if you were dead, you just had to hang around with your squad. So like, cool. So we can get rid of that
Yeah, that's
and then just keep the parts that people like and then remove the parts that people don't
conveniently
like.
if people go, man, I really hated this rule. All right. If that's
Yeah,
consistent, and it was in the case of the ghost thing, like, okay, cool. We'll just
and so as we continue to refine this, I think we're also coming to figure out what our standard sort of rule set is going to be like for these types of things. And I'm very comfortable with this one in particular. I think it works well. It's easy to do the bandages. So like first time we did bandages recently, they were like really crappy quality bandages that I had just made from the dollar store or whatever. This time we made them better using like fabrics and stuff, and people were totally cool with that. And so this time again, we're like, okay, we're going to push it even one further by having, like the medics, bandages, and then so like doing all this stuff I think is helping create the kind of experience that players are looking for, but also coming up with game modes that they've never really experienced before is important, right? Like I don't want to do the same game, and we've done this in the past. I'm sure you can remember. We've done, the season starts and it's always the same big game. That's always the same game modes. It's always the same missions at the exact same time. And like I'm not interested in providing that experience for people,
yeah. Well, I mean,
year in and year
it's
out.
also one of those things where if we're running the same thing twice a year, every year, then like people are going to get bored of playing it. We're going to get bored of running it. So like, there's incentive for us to try new stuff.
Hmm.
Both on that way the players will have more fun, and so will we, right?
Yeah, exactly right. And like, Last Refuge is always like, it's always a fun time. It's always a good way to, to do something, do stuff in the village. But at a certain point, you're like, okay, like I don't want to do that again, or not for a while. Like it's time for something different.
Totally, yeah. Like I mean, and it's since the situation seems to be we're going to try to run a season opener and a season ender every year, which is great. Then the
Hmm.
answer to me is sort of like if we can build up a pool of 6 or 7 things that people like and then sort of cycle through those, that's wicked. And that should be very achievable for us. If we can keep creating new ideas every time, even better. But I think ultimately it'll be variations on themes. It's just a matter of trying
Yeah.
not to give people the same thing every time, because we don't want people to get bored and we don't want to be bored either.
That's right. Yeah, yeah, exactly right. So yeah, very much looking forward to that. Really good start to the season. I'm looking forward to hitting the field with you this weekend. I think it's going to be super fun.
Yes.
And then we'll do another. Obviously, we're going to keep doing podcasts. It's not like we're going to stop. But we'll do a more of a review of like our experiences and stuff like that in the upcoming weeks. I've got for us next week. There's a very special guest. We're joined by. I'm joined, I should say, by Dave Harrison, who is the owner of Zulu 24 Airsoft Park in New
Oh,
York.
that's super cool.
So we connected over Facebook, and he's going to be joining us at Iron Horse. And so we thought, well, there's an opportunity for us to have a great chat and stuff like that. But we thought, why don't we just do an introductory podcast, have a conversation? And so it's going to be fun because he is a small business owner, of course, of his company, but also he's a field owner, right? And so I think a lot of airsofters, I know myself, have definitely had, like uh, daydreams about, oh, well, if I was a field owner, I would do this, I would do that, etc. And so I'm really excited to talk to him
Get a little
about,
bit of
well,
reality there.
yeah, but also not just a load of reality, but like also like how do you balance both? Because he's a player, he's going to be playing with us at
Oh
Iron
yeah, I
Horse.
mean,
So how does being an airsofter inform how you run your field and like what kind of decisions that you make? And it's going to be a really great conversation. So I hope that you guys check us out next week to see to hear from Dave and hear some of his wisdom that he has to share
that's
about
very cool.
how to run an effective airsoft field. So yeah,
I'm
tune in for that.
I'm definitely excited to listen to that one.
Yeah. Well, guys, that's all we have for you this week. Thank you so much for listening again. Check us out next week when we talk to Dave from Zulu 24. It's going to be a great conversation. But until then, that's all we got for you. Thank you so much for listening. We wouldn't be doing this without you. So very much appreciate all of you tuning in, and we will talk to you next week.
Have a great week, guys. Go play some airsoft, and if you have a minute and you want to, join the Discord and make fun of my various selection of hats.
Cheers, everyone.
Bye.